Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Play Metroid Prime. It's Prime time! Last time, we booted up the game and blew up a space station, all in the daily work of Samus, and today we are here on a brand new abandoned planet, or so it seems. This is not SR-388, this is not Zebes. This is all new, unfamiliar territory, and we are stripped down to the bare minimum. We're right back down to how we started off in Fusion, where we only have a power beam and a scan visor and our wits. So let's get down to cracking and exploring. So yeah, I remember actually watching the Geek Critique on this, and I'm a huge fan of Geek Critique, that by the way. Like, a big part in my inspiration for analyzing video games comes from him and King K, to be honest with you. And I remember, watching his critique on this game, and he said the biggest problem with Prime was how it sets up everything. So, what he means by this is that the first area of the game, you start off in the space station, which is pretty linear, filled with simple action pieces, a bit of exploration, but it's all kept on a singular path, and going forward is pretty straightforward compared to, most other Metroid games. And then you get here on Tallon 4, and it's pretty easy to get lost. And to be honest, I don't think that's really a bad thing, honestly. Like, I feel like the way I look at this personally is that the way the game sets itself up is that it gets you accustomed to the kind of puzzles you'll be running into over the course of the game, but it sets up all of these environmental atmospheric pieces, like the destroyed remnants of, like, all of these test subjects and shit, and it shows you just how to get a better understanding of what's going on just from looking at the environmental pieces alone, so you can kind of piece together what's happening. And all the while, it's not like everything is, like, given to you on a silver platter. You still gotta scan things, you still gotta use Morph Ball for certain objects and shit. And when you get a good idea of just, like, what you need to be doing later down the road with the given equipment you get later in the game, to where you can kind of gauge and figure out just how potentially powerful you can become, it just kind of gives you this reflexive knowledge that the more you're given to work with at the start of the game, you feel all the more prepared going into the rest of the adventure, I find. So that way, when you're going into the game with the bare minimum, and then you get all of these upgrades, you pretty much kind of know what to do, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, yeah, some of the puzzle solving is a bit limited, since we're kind of stripped down of upgrades we would normally have. But at the same time, it's giving us, like, piece by piece, all of these different elements that we can get adjusted to and figure out how the game works. So that way we can better apply these things when the time arises. And then, for the rest of it, use our wits and our bare minimum and equipment to figure out what we can and can't do. Because since we knew, like, what upgrades we had before, we know what we're capable of and what we're not capable of at the given moment. So we have to use what we're given right here and now and go off of instinct to figure out what we need to be doing. And that's kind of the fun of Metroid Prime, knowing the limits and the limitations of your character and knowing how to apply all of that later technology and upgrades. I know this is kind of common thinking and, fundamentals that apply for pretty much every Metroid game, but I feel like the way Metroid Prime opens up especially is kind of like a conduit for all of this line of logic, basically. So yeah, as you can see here, this is also a planet where the Chozo have been. Like, where the fuck haven't they been at this point? Jesus Christ. And in order to kind of gain a better understanding of what happened to this planet and why it is the way it is, like, you can read through all of these diary/logbook entries, and you can get a better understanding of all of the events that transpired. So not only are you figuring out what the antagonists and shit are up to, you can also kind of gain a better understanding of the life and habitational, like, livelihood where on the planet of Tallon for, because before it ended up the way it did. And I love logbook entries, dude. Like, I love the lore especially. Like, sometimes, like, I was so invested in the lore that sometimes I would just pause the game, I'd sit down, and I would just go through it and read it. Like, I'm a sucker for, like, interesting backstory pieces and just getting a better understanding of the world I'm in. And that's really hard to do, you know? Like, most games, like, when they try to give, like, a big background of, like, when they tried to deliver, like, extensive lore behind their game worlds, sometimes, like, their games tend to sacrifice that, like, whatever narrative they had for in exchange for being able to, like, deliver on these, like, pieces of lore. Like, with Final Fantasy 13, for example, one thing that game really struggled with was that it really wanted you to read up on its, like, diary and logbook entries to gain a better understanding of the world. Because, like, no way in hell were you going to understand what the hell was going on otherwise, because the game did such a poor job at just telling you, just from the story beats alone, what was going on. And that's what I really love about Metroid Prime, is that it finds, like, a perfect balance between the two, and it never feels like either or is disconnected. Like, I feel like if you play through the games and you pay it just enough attention, you can kind of piece together piece by what happened just from one detail alone. Like, maybe you have, like, a lack of attention to detail to the environment, so maybe you can use the lore to brush up on details for what happened. Or you can just pay attention to the environment and how worn out and desolate it is. And it's like, yeah, I really do feel like Metroid Prime and all of its sequels are the only games I feel like that are able to accomplish and find, like, a perfect blend of narrative-based gameplay and extensive lore and background, like, development behind the scenes all at once. Like, goddamn, like, sure, it's like, it's probably one of the reasons I prefer the Prime games to some extent, because, like, I understand Samus isn't nearly as mobile as she was in the 2D games, which is why a lot of people tend to drift towards those and not the Prime games, I feel. But like, again, I'm a guy who loves, like, exploring the story and the world of my video games, basically. I love to gain a better understanding and knowledge. And just walking through and taking it in, that's the big selling point for me. And that isn't to say that this game isn't filled with combat or high action pieces. Though, admittedly, there are some fundamental flaws with some of the boss fights we'll be running into later down the road, but I'll be getting to those where I come to those. There's a reason Prime 1 isn't my favorite game of the trilogy, among other reasons, but we'll build up to those in good due time. So, the way forward is pretty straightforward, honestly, because of how limited we are, you kind of, it's almost kind of like a blend between, like, Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime, basically. Like, because of how bare and unequipped we are, there's only really one way forward, but at the same time, you're taking mental notes of every other, like, area beforehand, before realizing, oh, hey, I should probably come to this with a later upgrade. But the biggest difference between Prime and Super, I find, is that, like, in Super, whenever you gain an upgrade, sometimes it would open the way to not just one, but, like, 3 potentially different upgrades. And because of this, like, sometimes you would have to backtrack a good ways forward just to find out where to go next. And some of those areas you needed to go back to were, like, 2 different worlds away. And it really required a high attention or sense of detail to those environmental pieces. Metroid Prime kind of feels more like, okay, so I got one upgrade, so I can take this one upgrade and apply it to the next. And that isn't to say there aren't diverging paths. There are most definitely expansions and stuff along the way you can grab. But for the most part, with Prime 1 and most other Prime games in general, once you get one upgrade, you have access to the next, and the game doesn't usually stray that far away from it. So it's kind of like a weird mixture between linearity and non-linearity. Like, yeah, you're going on a singular path towards the goal most of the time, but at the same time, you still need to take kind of like these mental notes of being reassured of, okay, where do I need to go next? You know, where can I use these upgrades that I got and apply them to? And so it's still got that backtracking nature that games like Other M and Fusion definitely lack. So I feel like it's a perfect blend. I can get behind it. I definitely feel like a game like Prime is a little bit more straightforward to navigate through than, say, Super, for instance. Which might actually make it a better starting point than Super, now that I think about it. But, yeah, this here is our first mini-boss. And I won't lie, this is pretty difficult for a first boss. So the way this fight goes down, make sure you scan these enemies, you won't be seeing these again. The Ram War Wasp. You need to strike all of these War Wasps out and be sure to do it in ample time without falling into the acid, because man, this fight is unforgiving, because once you fall into that acid, if you fall just far enough, there's a chance you could fall into it to an extent of where you can't even get out of here, and I think that's absolute fucking bullshit. Like, So it's a good idea to make sure you stand in the center of the stage as much as you can. Another thing too is that if you hold the R button, you can actually hold your cannon and aim it with free directional influence, like most other shooters, except you can't really move away from the spot you're in. And I find that's the best strategy I use for this kind of boss fight, especially when these guys move so fast you can't even like bloody lock onto them. You gotta be fast, and I don't know. It's a pretty challenging fight, but I really feel like compared to the other bosses we're gonna be facing in a moment, this really shouldn't have been the first boss, like at all. I'm sorry. Like, this is not a good precursor for setting up the rest of the game's difficulty, I find. Oh my god, slow down. I was trying to press the L button to lock on there. There we go. And if you can shoot them as they're moving, there's a chance you can slow them down for a split second. That's easier said than done, though. Looks like some of these guys aren't actually slowing down. What the fuck? Oh, I didn't even see that. Okay. Come on. This fight isn't annoying at all. Come on. Where are you at, Mr. Warp? Oh, no, 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 no! See, that's what I'm talking about right now. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Oh boy. I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. Oh my god. I we could blast a few of them as they're coming out too. That's kind of convenient. I haven't gotten any energy pickups. These guys do not slow down for a minute. Ah! Can we shoot one, please? These guys don't give you moments of rest. Oh god, I thought one flew down for a moment. Ah! We hit one more time. Ugh. That was so close. Oh my god. What the fuck? That thing is so much harder than I remember. That is not how you start off a game. And make sure you scan some of these doors too, because they can have logbook entries behind them. Anywho, we have our first upgrade. We got the missile launcher. I feel like it's kind of arbitrary for every Metroid game to start off with you getting missiles. Either that or the morph ball. It really depends on what the game's feeling first. Alright, and we also get our first energy tank. Woohoo! But unlike Metroid Fusion, where the game was grateful enough to start us off with 10 missiles, we only have like 5 on hand, which is, let me assure you, not a lot. So, yeah, this is kind of going back to like early Metroid, where you're going to have to really go out of your way and really find your expansions to get good use out of them, because the game sure as hell ain't going to hand you any, that's for damn sure. Especially E-tanks. You don't really have a lot of energy tanks in this game, I've noticed. You can only carry up to 14, which is striking compared to Metroid Fusion, where we could carry up to 20. And I think that's still the most any game in the series has had up until that point. Or just in general, actually. But with the missiles, we can not only blow up certain doors, we can also get rid of these annoying wasp nests. Because for some reason, the beam alone can't really take care of them, so huzzah. So let's blow this open. And we're gonna go ahead and get ourselves a map layout of the area. I forgot to bring attention to it earlier, but I guess it didn't really matter in that area's case, since technically it was a prologue area and prologue area only, meaning that frigate we went to earlier on in the game, you know, the area we started off the whole game with, we're never going there again. Ever. Like, never, ever, forever, never. So yeah, I hope you grabbed all of the logbook entries you can out of that place. I know there was, like, one specific, like, logbook entry with the space pirates and all that is permanently missable if you don't get it there, which is kind of a dick move on the developer's part, but what can you do? Also, did I just get myself stuck in that branch? What the fuck? Whatever. Alright, so now that we have the missiles on hand, we can go ahead and grab our next upgrade, which actually isn't far off from where we were coming into Chozo Ruins at first. And with that upgrade in hand, we'll be able to access a lot of Chozo Ruins in its entirety, or at least 70% of it, rather. So, hooray us. And oh my god, those things do more damage than I thought they would. Oh my goodness. To be a bit more careful from this point forward. I'm playing on hard mode after all. I guess I shouldn't be totally surprised. Alright, so this doorway over here. Yeah, this door right here. And this is where we're going to be heading next. See, we took mental notes. What did I tell you? And it also helps that the maps here are really detailed. Like in the other 2D Metroid games, they were all squares, but they didn't really give you a proper, like, geometric laydown of the room. Here, the map is given a lot more character, and believe me, when you're trying to go back and backtrack through the environment, being able to have a map like this, and also all sorts of different environmental checkpoints, really helps in the navigation through the world of Metroid Prime 1. Oh my god, I love the Prime series maps so much. Oh my god, they have definitely carried my ass, that's for damn certain. So don't be surprised if I pull those up pretty goddamn often. Because I'll do it! I'm most definitely gonna do it! And that there is our morph ball, but of course we're not gonna be able to get it without a fight. And this right here is what should have been the first boss, god damn it. So, Got an army of beetles. Nothing special here, except they keep spawning on top of where I'm at. What the fuck? Like, what is this RNG I've been getting? Mash the A button. Target them. Mash the A button. Rinse and repeat. Nothing else to say and do, really, besides that. And here is our mini-boss. This is what should have been the first boss, and it teaches all of the basic mechanics behind what to expect out of a traditional boss in the Metroid Prime universe. So this guy is someone who is going to be making the best utility out of the strafe mechanics we had just been taught back in the frigate Orpheon. In his case, he has a plated front side that we can't do anything about, but if we wait for him to strike and jump out of the way and bait him into what we want him to do. Totally engaging boss fight, I know. Strafe out of the way, blasting in the back with some missiles, and that is all she wrote. Boy, I'd sure love to have the charge shot on hand. And yeah, that was the mini-boss. Why wasn't that the first boss of the game? Ah! Difficulty disproportionate, like, balancing, I swear. And yeah, in this game, whenever you go into Morph Ball, it actually switches the view from first person into third person. So it's a good way to not only go into smaller spaces, but to also kind of get a better idea of, like, where you stand as far as, like, where you are, like, just in close quarters. And we'll be getting an upgrade later that's going to help a lot in close quarter combat, albeit for niche purposes and niche purposes only, as well as opening up exploration-based passages and such to all sorts of new destinations. And man, did I also tell you guys that I love music shifts in the environment? So, the way Chozo Ruins started off as is that it was a lot of bleeps and mechanical noises, whereas it really gave you the vibe of this place being extremely abandoned and old, but it felt like there was definitely still technology up and about in some parts of the area that were still alive and were willing to kill you on sight. So it was more of a tread cautiously kind of like track. And now it's playing this theme, and it's pretty catchy, honestly. It's like, it's the kind of musical piece where it's like, okay, so we got a good feel of the area, but there's still more exploration that needs to be done. And more exploration that needs to be done indeed, because, oh boy, now that we have the Morph Ball and Missile Launcher on hand, we can explore a good chunk of Chozo Ruins now. And also grab a good number of expansions along the way. So, with that being said, that's going to be it for part 2 of Metroid Prime for the Nintendo GameCube. And I'll catch you guys later in part 3, where we explore more of Chozo Ruins and grab some more upgrades. So see you guys then.